to another episode of TNFro Is Reading. How I'm your host, Felicia Baxter. In this week's episode, I will be discussing HighFire by Ian Colfer. I will be showing or playing the interview from the University of Florida's College of Medicine's alumni newsletter. 23 years later, still very surreal. I'm just wondering why it took me so long to go back. I will go over the self-publication process, how I am developing my book strategy for my republication of my book, Not My Family, and in prep for the sequel. And then I will be concluding. And as always, I hope you enjoyed this episode just as much as I've enjoyed creating it. And thank you, and stay tuned. Welcome back to the episode. You know, I always have a side hustle. And one of my side hustles that I'm most proud of is my affiliation with Writer's Block Coffee. I actually signed up for this brand just a little over a week ago, almost 2 weeks ago, and I've actually earned 2 commissions. One for just $12, the next one for $2. But I think as I tell more people about it, and I actually drink more of the coffee, I think that more people will appreciate it just as much as I have. Not only do they have 100% roasted coffee within the United States, they also have these really cool accessories. The coffee that I bought, sometimes you get over excited and you rip off the top, and how do you bound it up or clip it so it doesn't go bad? Well, I took care of that today by buying the 2-in-1 coffee scoop clip, as well as the color changing mug with the Writer's Block Coffee emblem on it. The reason why I had to actually buy the clip is because I needed an alternative way to help preserve my coffee. But one of my favorite mugs, from LL Bean, I actually destroyed because I did not have it properly secured on top of my bag as I was preparing to leave for my trip to Florida this past weekend. So I had to actually get a replacement big coffee mug. And I'm hoping this will suit the bill. If not, I'm going to go online LL Bean to get my stone salt glaze mug as a replacement. But I'm honestly thinking that my Writer's Block coffee mug is going to be a proper replacement. So join me by navigating to writersblockcoffee.com/TNFro Is Reading to not only give me props, and I actually get leads as far as when you click on that particular website or web address, but also if you enter it in, you will all get up to almost 10, 15, or 20% discount on your entire order, as well as a percentage off of shipping. And you can't beat that. And just navigate to writersblockcoffee.com/TNFro Is Reading to find out all the wonderful things that this great company has offered, as well as to get a percentage off your order as well as shipping. Now, back to the rest of the podcast.
Vern did not trust humans was the long and short of it. Not a single one. He had known many in his life, even liked a few, but in the end they all sold him out to the angry mob, which was why he holed up in Honey Island Swamp, out of harm's way. Vern liked the swamp okay, as much as he liked anything after all these years. God damn. So many years just stretching out behind him like bricks in that road old King Darius put down back in who gives a shit BC. Funny how things came back out of the blue. Like that ancient Persian road. He couldn't remember last week, and now He was flashing back a couple of 1,000 years, give or take. Vern had baked half those bricks his own self back when he still did a little blue collar. Nearly wore out the internal combustion engine. Shed his skin 2 seasons early because of that bitch of a job. That and his diet. No one had a clue about nutrition in those days. Vern was mostly ketogenic now. High fat, low carbs, apart from his beloved breakfast cereals. Keto made perfect sense for a dragon, especially with his core temperature. Unfortunately, it meant the beer had to go, but he got by in vodka. Absolute was his preferred brand. A little high in alcohol, but easiest on the system, and Waxman delivered it by the crate. So Vern tolerated the swamp. It wasn't exactly glorious, but these weren't exactly the glory days. Once upon a time, he had been Wyvern, Lord HighFire of the HighFire Erie, if you could believe that melodramatic bullshit name. Now he was king of jack shit in Mudsville, Louisiana. But he'd lived in worse places. The water was cool and the alligators did what they were told for the most part. If I tell you fuckers to dance, then you goddamn well better synchronize the hell out of a routine, Vern often told them in not so many words. And it was truly amazing what common gators could achieve with the right motivation. So he spent his days in the bayou, blending in with the locals, staying downwind of the swamp tours, though there were days he longed to cut loose and barbecue a barge full of those happy, snappy morons. But putting the heat on tourists would bring the heat on him, and Vern hadn't gotten to the age he was now by drawing attention to himself. Shining a spotlight on your own head was the behavior of an idiot, in Vern's opinion, and his opinion was the only one that mattered, in his opinion.
So that was a read section from the New York Times bestselling author of Artemis Fowl series. Comes this hilarious and high-octane adult novel about a vodka-drinking, Flashdance-loving dragon who lives an isolated life in the bayous of Louisiana. His adventures go up even more a level of crazy when he crosses path with an 8-fingered 15-year-old troublemaker on the run from a crooked sheriff. This has to be probably one of the funniest books that I have ever listened to, and I am sharing it with you today because I think that reading is fundamental, but if you have access to Audible, this is one of those books that the narrator makes the book. And this reading is from the book HighFire, a novel by Ian Colfer. I am almost tempted to download one of his Artemis Fowl series to actually present it on the show because this book is hilarious. How can you be a dragon and your drink of choice is vodka and you just chilling along in the Delta and you get your vodka delivered to you? That is the craziest thing I have ever heard. And sometimes he's tempted to barbecue those swamp tour people. I can only imagine if there could be a similar story with the tours down in the Everglades. And I think this is apropos because I was just in Florida this past weekend. So take it from me. HighFire by Ian Colfer is a great read, and I can actually understand it by just listening to the first couple of chapters today on Audible, why it has been on the New York Times bestseller list for a number of weeks now. So this past weekend, I did more than my usual binge watching of every episode of Deep Space Nine, Living Single, and any other Star Trek movie or series. I had the pleasure of returning to my alma mater medical school after 23 years, because in all reality, I had not gone back to the University of Florida since graduation day in May of 1997. 23 years, I don't know where all the time went and why it took me so long to come back. And I didn't understand. It was just really surreal because a lot of my memories were very disjointed, and I could not understand why I couldn't remember certain places. Number one, it had been 23 years, and there had been a lot and a massive amount of building. The apartment that I actually co-managed is no longer there. They actually tore it down. They renamed Williamsburg Apartment after Danny Rawlings rolled through there. The parking lot where I used to rollerblade and play rollerblade hockey with my friends, that hill that I used to rollerblade down full throttle before I would cut that right and go into the front of the building at Shands. The hill is still there, and it looks even more treacherous now. And I didn't know why I did that at full throttle, either with a bike or rollerblades. I was insane. I was in my truck and I was scared. So you could tell that I'm just an old codger. But I was felt very welcome, even though there were a lot of students that actually attended the sessions. I felt great that the 15 or so students that did attend, I hope they actually got a lot out of it. I spent time speaking about the process of publishing a book, what I'm doing now, and who I actually was. When you actually say it out loud, you do realize just how weird my atypical career has been. From the time I went into the military, all of the installations I did with Cerner, then buying my truck, buying an RV, and pulling across country, and then coming back, living in it for about a year and a half because it just made sense to me. All of those things were by themselves were topics that it could lend itself to a separate section. But what I found that in itself was even my current position as a medical director for Blue Cross Blue Shield Tennessee, it is all different, and not everyone chooses this pathway. Would I have done some things differently? Probably so. I would have taken more time to truly be in the moment. I probably would have written my book earlier, and I would have used, even though I used an unconventional means to actually publish, I would have used more conventional means to actually get a book publication strategy together for positive publicity, as well as creating that buzz before the book actually dropped. That would have made more sense. I would have spent that time editing the book line by line before publication and made it worth the $26.99 that the book is priced at this time. But I'm hopeful for the changes that I'm making. Not only will it be worth that particular price because I do own the ISBN number, but I'm republishing with a different company. And I'm going to also spend the money on truly and comprehensive line editing, that it would actually be worth it. And it also be worth because I'm also working on a sequel, and I'm hopeful that the in-depth editing that I'm doing will make the sequel just make more sense. So if anything, I wanted that talk to just recognize that there is another way of having a career in medicine, and how your medical education truly does lend itself to other careers. You don't have to, if you don't really like being an internist or even being a hospitalist, ED doctor, or even a surgeon, there are other means to actually continue your practice. I found that out for the first time by getting more involved with IT and implementations. I do know that there's a medical writing career in there for me. I'm using it more so to write fan fiction and my own fiction, and also blog posts. I'm also with the research and actually being able to explain many of these technical things for the average American and international consumer, those things actually make sense to me. And it is truly meaningful when you get to write and you control your own narrative, whether it's fictionalized like mine or whether it is truly in depth and making a true and positive medical career wherever you are. And I think for all of my experiences that I had to go this route to be able to write and do what I'm doing now, to be able to adjust and keep moving on. I don't think, and I'm hopeful that I wasn't discouraging or disparaging about those students that want to stay in Gainesville, but I don't think it would have been as fun for me if I had just stayed in the Gainesville, Florida area and not experienced the rest of this country as I have actually done. And no, my way is not the best way and it's not meant for everyone, but I sure did have a lot of fun. And when you write it all down or you talk about it, it definitely is. And it has been pretty exciting. So I'm excited about the next steps. Although it took me 23 years to get back, I'm actually going back in May for the commencement ceremony for the medical school because my proctor, Dr. Alma Littles, is actually giving the commencement address. And I'm actually pretty excited about her doing the address because I actually know her. And also, she's the first African-American female to actually speak or give the commencement address at the medical school graduation. So I'm pretty excited about going back again. In 2014, I had the pleasure of buying a package from Author House to self-publish my book. And it wasn't until the end of 2018, the beginning of 2019, that I finalized the synopsis of a book draft as well as completing the first and subsequent drafts of the book. And it was actually published May of 2019. There were several parts of that process that I know I should have done differently. One of the things afterwards that knowing what I know now is the truth behind line editing. If you want, and if you're serious about turning out a high quality product, you basically should have intensive line editing, where not only does the editor goes line by line, proofreads and makes changes not to tense, add in and make suggestions for the additional information, as well as completely reorganizing a book. I didn't have that. I had the service where it seems like they must have run the manuscript through a computer process, which basically just did a glorified proofreading and charged me $400. If you want a book with complete sustenance and to be taken seriously, you need intensive line editing. One of the things I wish they had suggested was my reorganization of my table of contents. In the rewrite, I have taken the chapters themselves, reorganized it into 4 parts. The first part being the R-knots, the second part being regaining my memory, the third part being the psychology of it all, and the fourth part being the return of Franny. Each one of those sections has the original chapters, but I've added additional information. I'm hopeful that this reorganization of this manual and then subsequent in-depth line editing will make the sequel, which I started working on a few months ago, make more sense. I did take the opinion of one of my friends seriously. She said it was just really hard to follow. The convoluted familial connections just kind of lost her. And after I reread it, I realized that some of the chapters, it's a quick read and it's an in-depth read, but some of the chapters were shorter than expected. And I think it could have been, and it was worth being expanded upon. So I'm hopeful that the reorganized work itself will be worth the read and definitely worth the $26.99 that I'm expecting everybody to pay for it. Now for the reading of the first chapter. The Arnotts, Chapter 1. My name is actually Franny, and I'm a square peg in a box of round nuts. It escapes me who originally stated the use of expletives is unimaginative, and denotes a limited vocabulary in the user. I start with an apology for the expletives in the upcoming pages, but shit and hellfire. Did that just really happen? Who is my family? Where do I belong? Who does that? Once more, people become aware of the extent of the pathology. I guarantee they will ask, what the hell, and why hasn't she gone postal? No, I haven't gone postal, and I'm still living and not in a state or federal correctional facility. I think I'm going to change that to, and I'm not living in a state or federal correctional facility. My name is Maria Butler, formerly Francine Marie Purcell of South Texas. Name change and identity almost obliterated without her knowledge. I can remember from an early age a feeling of displacement and never quite fitting in anywhere. I grew up on the East Coast in Virginia, but as an adult I moved around. I moved to the West Coast initially for school and then for work, with that feeling of disconnection from everything I knew. Although my family was dysfunctional and made it difficult for me to develop and sustain meaningful connections, I still yearn for a connection. My primary means of false connection and relationship assumption was through social media. I originally took a contract position for a commercial insurer in Savannah, Georgia, that had offices in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Charlotte, North Carolina. Through my actuarial work, contracting, and utilization management work, I was kept busily shuttling between the offices, with very little time to chat on the phone, drop in for a visit, or catch a quick bite at the local barbecue joint. However, this did offer a layer of protection from up close and personal onslaught of requests for money, emergency babysitting, because someone gets locked up, or the general psychological dumping of problems from less stable family members. Social media allowed me to stay somewhat connected on my own terms and from a safe distance. I was summoned back to Virginia via text, of all things, for my great aunt Ella's funeral. Why text someone about a funeral? Because the Butlers and the Sampsons know not to call me directly anymore. Simply because I don't answer most calls with the 757 interchange, and those family members who are actually saved in my digital Rolodex are blocked. I know. Extreme measures, but my peace of mind and poaching of my time, and the not poaching of my time, is priceless to me. My cousin Manny Butler is the electronic historian of the family and started posting about his life and influence on his life on the Butler family Facebook page. His cataloging and updates to the family tree will become instrumental in my own discovery of my personal history. However, his depiction of our warm and loving elderly family member was complete contradiction to the woman I remember who chased my sister Angela and I from around her house with a stick and threw dirty mop water on neighborhood kids who she thought were making too much noise around her window. This was the same woman who my cousins always had suspicious black eyes and whelps on their legs from her infamous extension cord beatings. And this is the same auntie who buried 3 husbands and 2 boyfriends under suspicious circumstances. All those events marked with new and shiny Cadillacs and mink coats too much for the temperate climate of southeastern Virginia. But what do I know? I would pay my respects and attempt to beat a fast retreat before I would get pulled into any drama. But before I ran screaming back to my rental car, I did a fast head count at the funeral and realized that there were fewer than 50 family members of a vast family who were living, and the few who were left were on their last leg. If my estimate of life expectancy was correct, in a few short years my family would die out, or so I thought. Evidently, my cousin Manny and I had the same thought. This knowledge ramped up his efforts to document our rapidly disappearing family. His post started with his experience on Ancestry.com and even published a few of the connections on his page. He started direct messaging to family members to review and correct and add connections for completion. Out of curiosity, I started participating and assisting in the expansion of his work. At his encouragement, I even submitted DNA to 23andMe for genealogy purposes just to find out how African I really was. As I added connection and checked leaves, I discovered early deaths from heart disease, homicide, and suicide. I was introduced to female and male philanderers, murderers, suspected like my Aunt Ella, schizophrenics, and pedophiles. I started to think, how am I going to survive this lineage? What kind of family is this? I come from some pretty messed up stock. Was I always destined to fail or struggle? Could a sister get a break? I started to explore the meaning of family. I was beginning to learn that my family was the antithesis of this. They harbored secrets, even if the truth was liberating. There is a propagation of the unbelievable, where love is met with jealousy, hurt, and suspicion. You learn to mismanage relationships as a survivor of a family with these complex dynamics, and you recover only by recognizing the enemy from within your own family. And that completes the first chapter of my book, Not My Family, and I hope you will take the time to tune in to the next episode, because I intend to continue to read at a minimum the first rewritten section of Not My Family 2.0. Well, that's how I'm going to end this week's episode. And as always, this is my form of entertainment as well as a form of therapy. But if you are searching for help and direction in your struggles with depression, anxiety, or addiction, there are many possibilities for you to seek treatment. You should not have to suffer in vain. Call 1-800-273-8255. It is a hotline that's available 24 hours a day. They also have a chat feature at Suicide Prevention lifeline.org/chat/. And if vodka or other substances are a problem for you, please call 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. And again, that app is also 24, or that line is also 24/7. Then there is Talkspace and Doctor on Demand, where you can seek counseling service in the privacy of your car or your cubicle at a fraction of the cost of conventional therapy. So check them out. This journey is hard, and it's okay to ask for help. And believe me, it's okay not to be okay, as long as you're doing the work to unpack some things and to work through those things. Don't forget to navigate to www.dalesangelsinc.com for all special offers and updates on nerd news. Drop me a line at tnfroisreading@gmail.com or leave a 2-minute non-trolling voicemail at 423-463-0658. If it's positive, and again, non-trolling, I may actually read it or play it on a podcast. If you're tired of freeloading, please become a patron through Podbean. At patreon.podbean.com/thetalkingfro, or put 5 on it. You can leave me a tip at paypal.me/FeliciaDAI. And again, this is my form of therapy as well as my form of entertainment. And I hope you were not just entertained, but you actually learned something. And I hope you join me next week as I will be reading more from my rewrite of my book, Not My Family. And until then, happy reading.